I am so excited today to have three other survivors with me today, Rachel, Doug, and Cathy. And we are going to share some experiences, talk about things we've gone through, ways we've healed and recovered, and resilience, and kind of also gifts that we've been left with as we've recovered from what we've all been through. So welcome, everyone.
Hey, Max, great to see you. Hey.
So who wants to jump in and get started?
Well, I love the idea of gifts. You know, I think we all probably have some. It was my experience in MK Ultra Mind Control that as I was being lost into the project where I was losing my free thought, the less free thought that I had, the more heightened my intuitions became, the more heightened my extra senses were. I developed a 44 times visual acuity, you know, like trying to see trauma before it happens. And just a heightened sense, kind of like what animals have. You know, you can feel the energy of people. And when I healed, I was delighted to find that not only was I able to retain all those, it was like I could drive it now and choose it and have it, you know, be exactly what I needed it to be. So I find there's quite a few gifts that came from my experience that I really treasure and cherish today, especially the heightened intuitions and insights, telepathic abilities, and deeper connections with people.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. Go for it, Doug.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, yeah, for me, it's because the body was never safe. Excuse me. Yeah, living out in the spiritual realms, it was, yeah, you know, what they intended for our harm, we've actually turned to good. And, you know, those resources I find have been invaluable for me to get through what I've gone through. And I don't think my perpetrators intended that. And I know some of my perpetrators are very angry about that. And that's, I really don't care. But it's been incredible, you know, to use that to help myself and others. And it's been a beautiful thing, you know, and I know for you, Rach, particularly with your psychic ability and things like that, these are things that are amplified with trauma. And some papers I was reading recently on this talks about how when you have near-death experiences, often your IQ is catapulted up into the highly intelligence ranges and things like that. And they wanted to do that to us as children for their, you know, use and abuse. But I love that we've turned it around for good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I often talk about it's not intelligence quotient, it's wisdom quotient. Because if you've been to other realms during your lifetime, you've had near-death experiences and traveled and done all sorts of weird things, you're going to have this connection to that, I don't know, creative source, whatever you want to call it. It's the Akashic. It's this divine information that you can access, which puts you above. I mean, all the great geniuses eventually came out and said, well, I got that information in a dream, or you know, I felt that it came from outside of me or to my higher self or whatever. Even Newton said that. So, yeah, there's this incredible ability that we have because of the trauma that we've been through. It's interesting. The False Memory Syndrome Foundation, one of their creatures said something along the lines that, oh, it's okay to do this to these people because they always say that they're better for it. I'm not saying that I'm better for it, and I don't think anybody here would advocate for that. But when you've been honed like a weapon into a very, very finely tuned tool, you can achieve great things. And it doesn't mean that there's no advocating for that sort of abuse, God no, but it means that you can use it against them. That's one thing. I think that's one of the reasons why we probably all survived, is because we're going to be doing work like we have been and exposing this. And that's why I think I'm still here.
Yeah.
Me too.
I was given one of these intuitive messages once about, and I was shown, like, if the dark throws something at you, they hope that it'll destroy you and take you down. But if it doesn't, if you jujitsu it and recover, then you actually go up a few levels. So that's the risk that they take. right? And I too had many near-death experiences. And what it did for me is I have absolutely zero fear of dying because I've already been there, and it's actually it's nothing terrible. You never stop existing. You're just in here or you're not in here. So considering most people in the world, that's probably the greatest fear. I feel like, wow, okay, so there, there's one thing. I'm not afraid of dying, and it's something you said, Cathy, to me once. It's this endurance. Like people have said it all throughout my life. Like I have this physical vigor and endurance, and I don't get sick. And if I have any kind of thing, I heal right away. And I feel like that came from all that trauma because I had to be able to do that to survive, right? So now that I've survived and recovered, it's kind of nice. I get to keep that endurance and that self-healing ability.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And my perception, and this is just perception, is that when the trauma occurs and the brain shuts down neuron pathways around the trauma and represses it, then this compartment over here that's traumatized, another one is created, another one. And none of these compartments in the brain have intercommunication. So what happens over here is not communicated to this part, and the brain is therefore not communicating to the body to be tired because it's not putting the pieces together, that we should be after that kind of situation. So I thought, well, if the brain is capable of that, once I healed and opened up the neuron pathways in my brain and regained access to my brain completely, to me that if that could be done within the brain, then why not drive that? Why not choose that and be that? And I still find that I have an ability for an extreme capacity and heightened endurance by choice when I choose it. But I also think I'm trying to make up for all those years of sleep deprivation that I experienced. And I don't mind, I am a sleep queen. So I keep a good balance on it. It's not like I just want to be hyper all the time. I'm not. I have a good balance. I'm also, I know how to relax and just simply enjoy. But if I want that heightened endurance, I know our brains are capable of that. And I know that we can communicate that to our bodies and use that for ourselves.
Yeah, well, I find, Cathy, because I have a high level of disassociation and co-consciousness, and the journey to integrating the different parts that were fragmented by my abusers, that whole journey of self-love and working with the different parts of me that are like, they've been kept in isolation, and all of a sudden they're brought into this community of love and integrate. It is such a wonderful, wonderful self journey and self care and learning how to love yourself. And then those skills are just brilliant in learning how to love other people and the people around you. And I find I always attract people who have a similar past to me. You don't even talk to them. I'll go out with friends or something. You'll meet someone in a club. They say, I've never told anyone this, but blah 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 blah. And it's that journey that we go on with ourselves and that healing, with our souls, because I think we come here to learn how to love in a difficult situation, that we can then teach other people that. And, I remember one young man I was talking to at one stage, just met him out one night, and I said to him, look, have you been through this? Da, da, da. And he goes, oh my gosh, I've never told anyone. And I was able to give him some techniques. Never, he went away. 2 years later, we crossed paths again. He ran up to me, threw his arms around me and just said, thank you, thank you, thank you. What you told me changed my life. And that to me makes sense of what we've been through. It turns our tragedy into success. It turns our darkness into light. It turns it into beauty. And for me, that's such a privilege to have a life like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? How the difference you can make with just a few words or just recognizing the signs, because there's so many signs when people have been traumatized severely. And when you've been through it yourself, as long as you're not completely shut off from it, you can recognize it and really make a difference in somebody's life. And again, that's why these conversations are important. I think also when you've had the sort of severe trauma that we've all experienced and so many others have, you can't just sit there and talk about rubbish. I can't talk about handbags or jewelry, or I just feel like an idiot, and I just shy away from people like that now. And that's fine. I mean, they haven't had the sort of depth of experience that we've had, and that's fine for them. But I just can't do it. So I only seek out those people that are similar, or I can learn from, that are amazing. So most of my friendships are now online. I'm staring at screens all the friggin' time.
Yeah, totally. All of you guys are my friends online. But yeah, that I think some of the, because of the just inhuman, impossible kinds of trauma that we went through, I developed, because I had to. I also had a mother who was programmed in a multiple, and so I never knew, was she going to be good mommy, or is she going to be violent mommy, or is she going to be depressed on the floor mom? So I developed this ability to read people. And I say it like, to me, when I meet people, they're like a billboard. They just, all of who they are flashes. It's just right there. And I actually think we all as human beings are telepathic, and we can see and feel each other. It's just been dumbed down, with all the mind control that goes on out there. But because I had such a severe situation, I had to develop this extra to survive, right? To figure out what's going to happen next and all that. And it's been really, really helpful, because I studied psychology and I became a therapist. And I helped a lot of people with trauma. I used to work in the prisons and in the inner city and rape crisis centers. So I was around people who had severe, severe trauma as well. And it gave me, well, the other thing it gave me is, some people would say, I can't work with these populations, as they call it. And I could work with anyone, because there's pretty much nothing I haven't been through or seen, right? But whenever I've worked with people, I feel them. Like, it's so easy in that way. And so that's something that I'm grateful for, those abilities that got honed in me.
I found that in healing, the reclaiming the free thought again, and the free will, soul expression, and one of the very first things that is reclaimed is compassion, and wanting to help others and make sure nobody has to go through what we went through. We get this desire, and I see a lot of survivors experiencing that. They start on their healing journey and they want to help others. First thing they want to do is get out and help others. But if they haven't healed themselves and opened up those neuron pathways in their brain, they can be triggered by what's said from the other survivors. And then you end up with this mess of miscommunication going on. It's as silly as taking dissociative people who've been severely traumatized and putting them in group therapy, where they all sit around and talk to each other. The suggestibility is heightened. They're taking too much information in. They're triggering all over the place, triggering each other. It just turns into a disaster. So until people are fully healed and one in themselves, and not a group therapy in their own head, then they're much more effective in being able to help others without being triggered. And yet at the same time, we maintain that capacity to recognize each other and see that full picture of what someone's enduring or what they may have endured, and have an ability to hear them. We can listen to them when other people tend to shut down just from the trauma. We have a capacity to really hear what they're saying, and then to be able to respond with love and helpful tips, how we got to reclaim our self-control and inner peace, and share that with them.
Yeah, and I think capacity is a good word for me at the moment, Cathy, because what I'm noticing is the more I heal, the more I recover my memories and heal from them, the more capacity I have. because the less healing I've done, it's like I'm a bottle. I'm almost full to the top, and any little thing would trigger me in the beginning of my healing process. But as you heal, that bottle empties of trauma, or what I call residue trauma. So you have more capacity in that bottle to fill it up with your everyday life, rather than being triggered by anything that happens. So for me, and I know I've still got a lot more to heal, and I think it's, for me, a lifelong thing, but I'm loving that as I go back to my memories, I face my fears, I see that there's something in the past, not something that I'm reliving every day. My ability to enjoy life just gets better and better and better. And as you say, as we heal, then we're less triggered by others, and we're more able to help others. And I think we're all more able to help ourselves as well.
Yeah, and on that subject of triggering, I want to thank you, Cathy, because one of the greatest pieces of wisdom that you've shared is that you write down what you've experienced, because it changes the way that your brain deals with it, or it puts it from one compartment to another. And that was one of the tools that I used. And I've found, because otherwise the memories would just go around and around in circles in my head, and that, and then I'd start to doubt, is that how it happened? And as soon as you start writing, it's very, very clear. It sort of puts everything down almost chronologically, even if you're not even attempting to make it chronological. It just works that way. It's incredibly powerful. So thank you. And thank you for all the other wonderful tools that you've given us, because obviously you're a trailblazer. You came in very early on when, I guess there were probably people before you who spoke about these things, but probably didn't have the longevity that you've had. You also give us
I'm
hope for that reason.
not real sure. I'm not real sure. Intelligence Insider Mark Phillips taught me, and it's what he found on the highest levels of intelligence mind sciences. Some simple tools, basic things, that were buried under national security and kept from education, kept from mental health, and kept from the medical community, kept from the population. And it was like he was reminding me of the gifts that we were already born with, the ability to heal, the resiliency that we have is so amazing, body, mind, and spirit, And so he reminded me of that. And I'm so fortunate that he did that for me. And now I can share it everywhere, because it was my experience to heal with it. And so I can share that information. And that writing is something that I use to stop night terrors. Do you guys ever have night terrors? Do any of y'all ever have night terrors?
Yes.
I've had a bunch. Yeah.
I had an interesting experience when I was about 5, where I used to have night terrors, and they're very, very vivid dreams, and I allowed the monsters to get me, and then I said, see, it doesn't hurt. And since that day, I've never had nightmares.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And I still remember it. It was very, very vivid. Two dreams. But what I'd do as a little kid is I'd sit there during the day thinking about those dreams, and then at night I would use my co-consciousness to go in. And often I have the issue where while I'm dreaming, I'm awake at the same time, even when I'm asleep. And that can be problematic, but also helpful. So, I often have the issue in my dreams that I can't see because my eyes are closed, or, whatever I wear to bed is what I'm wearing in my dream, all those sorts of things. But I'm thankful not to have the nightmares, but I think that's the reason.
Wow.
Sorry to interrupt there. Yeah.
Yeah, the nightmares for me were actually a way for the memories to come through. So I would have these it was like a major motion picture. I mean, it was this huge dream nightmare, and then I'd wake up and I would have sweated out my bed and I was screaming. Sometimes I'd run to the bathroom, but I wouldn't make it. So the body was just in the memory too, and releasing. But then, Cathy, I would write it down, and then it was clear at some point after I would write it down that was a memory, or it was a piece of a memory. So, for example, I had this dream that I went in a supermarket, and the produce section where they have like a thing of tomatoes or cucumbers, like they're almost like stalls, but instead in my dream there were animals, and they were all tortured. Well, then after that, after writing it down, what came through was that room in my uncle's facility, where he had tortured animals in various stages of torture in these different stalls, right? So it was super interesting. And then the other thing is with writing, it helped me to figure out my parts. And actually different parts would actually have different handwriting. So I used to wonder, why did my handwriting change? Like it would be slanted or blocky or completely different. And then that's how I identified, ooh, there's different parts of me. And with triggers, I found it super useful to use them to also kind of like a timeline back to things, experiences that I had. And so to go back to the animal theme, I would be super triggered. Like I couldn't see anything on a video, or like if I was driving down the road and a squirrel would be run over, roadkill, like any kind of suffering of animals would trigger me so badly. I would start shaking. I was having panic. I mean, I could not bear it. And it occurred to me at some point, ooh, that might not be exactly normal. So it led me back to that whole memory of torture in the facility. So I use that today still. If something triggers me, I sit with it and I ask, like, okay, what's this really? Because the present, it's something in the present, but it always leads me to open some door in the past.
My night terrors were zombie nightmares, which I then realized as I went through, and my memories was because my father had me experimented on with prions, which in deer brings out a zombie disease. It's interesting, I'm not the only one in my family who's spoken up against my father who also has these zombie nightmares, but I also think that's part of the programming, end time programming that I had. And once I recognized, actually, once I started to speak out publicly with my face and my voice, in 2018, they pretty much stopped. I think I've had one zombie nightmare since then, but I was having them at least one a month my entire life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When I started writing, I kept a notebook by the bed and would make notes, of the nightmares. And pretty soon, it got to a point where I didn't even have to wake up and make the note. It'd be like, okay, that's this, that's that. And I'd separate it. And it was like gaining control of my brain in my sleep. And it changed the way that I dream. Since I didn't dream under mind control, I didn't dream the first 30 years of my life at all. And then when I started dreaming, I had the night terrors, and then I made the notes, got rid of that happening. And then my dreams now are abstract. There'd be like defrag, putting things in their proper order and just cleaning up my mind. So I wake up real fresh in the morning and knowing what I'm going to do. And, it just aligns things. Or I have intuitive dreams, and my dreams are so highly intuitive that I recognize them when I wake up. It'd be like, oh, it's one of those dreams, and I follow those dreams because they're always 100% accurate. They're absolutely amazing. They're astounding. They're a gift, and it's something that I cherish. So by taking control of those nightmares, wow, I have a lot to be grateful for.
Cathy, I want to ask you a quick question, because you say, you've said, when I regained my free thought, right? So for people that might not know what that exactly means, I mean, we can look out in the world today and pretty clearly say people do not have free thought, like the majority of humanity, right? Like they're repeating things that are told to them, but there's not very much original thinking. So anyway, I just was wondering if you could explain what that was like, and like what's different after you regain free thought.
Well, I lost conscious thought because of the strategic application of MK Ultra mind control, the scientific application of creating the compartment, shutting down the conscious mind so that I didn't have any choices or any thoughts of my own. Absolutely no capacity for creativity or anything like that. And then systematic sleep, food, and water deprivation, starved the brain even further. So I really lost my free thought for probably a good 25 years of my early life. And I remember losing the capacity to think. And it was as though my last free thought was wishing there was some place in the world where people didn't hurt each other. And when Mark came along, by the time he came along, I couldn't think to trust him. I couldn't think to even know there were good people in the world. I had no capacity to think of anything like that on my own. And he taught me to, start writing out my memory and all, because I was turning 30, electrochemical changes were happening. And just like my brain automatically compartmentalized trauma while I was an infant even, my brain knew I was safe, and it started leaking, little bits of that information. So I started writing. And as I gained conscious thought, conscious awareness, with it, the first thing that came was an ability to feel again. I had lost my ability. I was so depersonalized, I couldn't recognize myself in a mirror. And then I couldn't feel either, because pain and pleasure, there was no difference. I just couldn't feel. So when I regained conscious awareness, I remember the moment. I felt almost as though I came into the three-dimensional world, like whoomp, the gravity even felt heavy as I walked. I could feel the fabric in my jeans. I could feel things for the first time, my hair and my own skin. And it was an amazing experience to have such a dramatic moment of change. But I think it's because my brain was actually firing to where I could begin to regain and reclaim that conscious thought. So to me, that is free thought, as being able to even have a capacity to think for myself at all and to feel.
Yeah, I think it's, excuse me, self-observation. For me, it was every time I tried to think of my trauma, the programs would kick in. So there'd be a sleep program. I'd try and think back and process what I'd been through, and I'd fall asleep, or I'd get distracted, or it'd be like, part of me would change channels in my mind, and trying to have a consistent time, even for 15, 20, 30 seconds where I was able to go back and start to work on my trauma in the beginning was incredibly difficult, because all these different programs would kick in. So I'd have to step back, like all of you have been talking about, and self-observe and follow the crumbs, so to speak, and see what's presented there. And it's the same with the body. And, when we look at somatic healing and things like that, I too find that, my body tells me, because I start shaking uncontrollably sometimes, if there are different stimuli. And so I use that as a pathway into my past and try and look at different things in order to not only understand who I am, but feel who I am. And I have the same thing where I have to remember to come into my body and feel my body, because often I don't feel pain. I'll cut myself. I'll see, oh, there's blood. Oh, okay. I've got to, and it's feeling the body is delicious, but it's something for me as a trauma survivor that I'm not used to. I actually went into my creativity. So I used to originally go into the psychic fields to feel safe. Then they dosed me. I'm assuming it was LSD, but I remember being blasted through the dimensions as a little kid, and I was so petrified that was no longer my safe place. So then I went into creativity, and what I would do as a child was I became intensely creative as an artist, and then as an architect, and I would disappear. I would get a huge sheet of paper. I'd draw a squiggly line through it on Friday night, because in my house, we couldn't leave the house at night and things like that. And by Monday morning, that sheet was a whole city that I'd planned. And so that was my safe place. And so I developed incredible talents for creativity, in order to survive.
Interesting what you say about creativity, Doug, because I left a public service position that had been organised for me by two of my abusers, including my father. I knew it wasn't right, and I just didn't want to be there, and I knew it had been sort of set up. went to art school, my creativity came out, but then I was working with clay, and I'd taken a mold of a baby's head, and I was firing these babies' heads and creating these big sort of mural type things with them. And that was weird because I'd had this horrible memory of this baby being burnt on a bonfire that hadn't fully come through yet from a ritual I'd experienced. And then around that time, I decided to put this lip ring on my lip, which then a powerful psychic some years later pointed out to me was like a lock. Now, I'd already sort of kind of, at the time that I put that in was when things were starting to really surface. So I'd stuck this lip ring in. Now, my father's technique for shutting me up, as you and Max already know, but I don't think Cathy would have heard this, was to tell me to put it in my mouth, swallow it, the abuse, to put it in my mouth and swallow it, and then, to close it up, lock it with the key, and then swallow the key. So that locking of the lip, of the mouth, was something very significant part of the programming, until eventually I worked out that how can you swallow the key if you've already locked your mouth? And that freaked me right out. Then it changed to putting it in the drawer. But, it's amazing how the creativity the things surface. I mean, going to art school was one of the most important things I'd ever done. And I spent $50,000 in education that I still have to pay off, and I don't use that at all now, but it was part of my process for healing. It was incredible. Creativity is really, really important.
Yeah. Wow. And I, like you, Doug, I felt no pain. I would cut myself. I wouldn't even stop to disinfect it and put a Band-Aid on. I'd just keep going. I would, if I would sit in a position where my leg would fall asleep, and it wouldn't occur to me, it would not even occur to me that I could change position to become comfortable. I had this ability to endure all kinds of distress. I could forget to eat. I would be hungry, but it wouldn't connect to my brain. It wouldn't say, the hunger wouldn't go, oh, I should eat something. And so when I was younger, my friends called me the Terminator. They said, you can shoot off your leg and you just keep going. And, of course, that's not healthy, but that's how I was. And I also had like some self-mutilating stuff. Like I would scratch myself. I would pick scabs. I would just sit there and pinch my leg so hard it would leave a bruise. It was like I was just trying to feel something. I couldn't feel my body at all. And when I was around 9, I called myself Medusa because I was an avid reader, so I'd read Greek mythology, and because that image made sense to me, that it was like I was just a head. I had no body. There was no connection, and the thing that really helped me to get that back was exercising. So once I started exercising, and I still do it, it's a way to feel myself in my body. And I would have, up until I would say maybe even less than 10 years ago, I didn't notice it, but I didn't feel my legs. It was like my legs were dead. And so when I would walk, I wouldn't feel my feet on the ground. And I remember I went to a massage, I think, once, and the woman told me that by then I had been working out, and she said, you've got muscles all over except your gluteus. You're like there's no muscle tone there. And I thought, oh my God, okay. And then I went to this chiropractor guy who does other healing stuff, and he said that there was a part of my brain that had disconnected from my buttocks and my legs and like my lower body, which of course makes perfect sense. So he helped me work through that and do some exercises. And it felt really weird at first. I felt like, I don't know, like I was learning to walk again, because I didn't notice that I hadn't felt my feet and my legs. But when that feeling came back, it was incredible. And this wasn't even that long ago. So it's really interesting what our bodies do to kind of survive and to cope with that. So I do feel like I have feeling all through my body now, thankfully, but I will never stop exercising because I need that physicality I feel like, to keep me in my body.
Yeah, if I can cut in there just a little bit. Yeah, I had a similar experience. So I went and did bodybuilding when I was younger. Part of it was to feel safe and to feel strong against my attackers, but my body didn't exist from the waist down. And so, like a lot of guys who have been through trauma, we'll train our upper bodies and our legs will look like matchsticks, and it's quite disproportionate.
Yeah.
So I forced myself to train my legs, but every time I did, I felt like screaming and running out of the gym crying. And so I had to reconnect my consciousness with the lower part of my body as part of my healing. And like you, Max, going to the gym and working my butt off, so that my rule was, if I could walk out of the gym, I hadn't trained hard enough, because we do these extreme things in how we go at things. But yeah, it was very healing, and I'd suggest, particularly for a lot of men who've been through sexual abuse and trauma, focus on your lower body and regain that safety in it.
Wow. That's phenomenal. And in my experience, because of the MK Ultra being used on military special forces, they're programmed where they can take a bullet and keep on going, and they just, it no time to bleed, it was called, the program was. And I had experienced much of that too. So as I deprogrammed the program first, which Mark always wisely taught me to do, it helps so much to be able to get to deal with the reality. I found that if they could manipulate the brain from the outside and program somebody, that means our brains are capable of that. And if our brains are capable of that, then I can drive that. So I choose that for myself. So in my healing process, what they used against me, I just took for my own. I do no time to have a cold, no time to get sick, and I don't. And I stay really super, super healthy just with this mental game that I can do. I got an injury where I had an artery that was bleeding. It was a significant wound. And Mark was very concerned, was ready to take me to the hospital. And I said, no, just wait a minute. And I put my hand over it and kind of just put it under the water. But I went back in my mind before that had happened to me. And I knew that I could regulate my blood flow. If we can be programmed to the extent where the special forces take a bullet and keep on going, I sure could deal with that little boo-boo, So I shut off the blood flow and stopped it and kind of just healed it. And so it was completely healed. And that even surprised Mark at that point. But it's like, well, why not? If they can do it one way, why can't I? So we have this amazing physical capacity within us to heal ourselves on so many levels. We can regulate our own blood pressure. We can keep our lungs clear. We can keep viruses from invading. We can really just, we have so much more control over our bodies than we realize. So now, I celebrate that so much, and I'm so happy to be able to feel that I go out, I almost am walking around in nature every single day, and I put my arms up and breathe the air, feel the breezes and hear the birds, I love that. But get my feet in the ground, feel the earth under my bare feet, that kind of thing is such an immense pleasure to me. I celebrate being able to feel, and I also celebrate being able to shut off that pain alarm if I don't need it anymore. It's like, blood, okay, I got it. I don't have to go into this pain drama alarm system. Shut it off. So we have many abilities within, and I'm so excited for people to discover that, because we don't have to have trauma to know that.
Yeah,
we just need to know that our brains are capable of that. We have been blessed with this ability. We have such amazing capacity. Celebrate it, appreciate it, accept the gift. People will pray or whatever, but they forget to receive. We already have it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Max and Rachel and I have talked about this a lot, the ability to self-heal, and for all of us, how we have that in our bodies. I mean, I've been stabbed in the eye. I've got, I cut my hand all the way across, but I have no scars and things like that. I also, Rachel and I also have a thing called heterochromia, where we have eyes that are different colours, and I'm still doing research on it to understand it. And when we look back at MK Ultra and the Human Ecology Fund, and also back to Hitler and his scientists, they were fascinated with heterochromia. But one of the things that comes with it is we may actually have two sets of DNA, one in our blood and one in our flesh. So it's this incredible, as you say, healing ability, and it opens up our eyes. And I think we're being programmed with it when you look at all these movies like the X-Men and things like that. They know a lot more about what we're experiencing than what they're letting on. They want to keep us sick so they can profit off that. But yeah, we do. We have these incredible abilities through our consciousness to heal our bodies.
Yeah. I love what you said too. Yeah, and your in research, Max. Doug, is spectacular, particularly on the heterochromia. And I'm using that in the course that I'm teaching at the moment, because it's just so important. People need to know that having hazel-colored eyes actually makes you very psychic, especially if they're green. It's incredible. That's just one sign that's on our face, plain as day, that people who are programmers look for, and then they'll target a child because of that. But it's interesting what you're saying as well, Cathy. And I want to thank you too, because you are thriving. And a lot of the time, us survivors, we're not allowed to thrive. We're not allowed to show that we're happy. We're not allowed to show that we've healed, because other survivors will come and attack us. Because how dare you look happy? Because they're not happy. They're not healed. So thank you for putting your arms up then and showing, the joy in your heart and sharing that with us. But another thing that you said I found fascinating is, as a child, because I was trained under what I now understand was theta programming under MK Ultra, and they used me as a psychic as a small child, and it's very common. But they used to tell me that I could do things before they got me to do it. And then eventually my father told me at a later date, you never did those things. We just told you could, and then you could do them. So it's that a program to put in this idea that you can do something before you can actually do it. That's how powerful we are. Our souls, not just our minds, but our souls are super. We're capable of so much more than we realize.
And Cathy, I was just sort of like, when you were talking about the self-healing, because I've spoken about that to Rachel and Doug, and sometimes I'm a little scared to share that openly because it sounds so bizarre. But I had that same exact ability. I could, when I would be put in the freezers, they couldn't believe how long I could stay alive, but that's because I would heat up my blood. I would just heat myself up more while I was in there. And, there was an incident where my uncle laid me on an altar, and he basically hammered my bones to break them. And, I could hear the cracking and everything. And I was able to knit my bones back together. So just using my mind and my body. And, with even as an adult, that was during childhood, but even later as an adult, I had, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, I had what they call a lipoma. It's a benign tumor, and it was protruding out of this shoulder. So they had to do general surgery. It was huge. It was 6 by 6 inch tumor that they had to extract. So it was a big surgery. And then the surgeons gave me pain pills and said, for a few days, stay in bed and then try and move around a little and blah, blah. And when I got home from the hospital, I threw the pain pills away because, with all the drugging that they did with me, I don't like that kind of stuff. But the next morning I woke up and I went on a hike. I was fine. And when I went back for the first follow-up, there were supposed to be 3 follow-ups. The first follow-up, the surgeons, her jaw was literally on the ground, and she was like, but you're completely healed. That's impossible. But in my mind, I thought, well, no, it's not. I've done that a lot of times before, and I didn't even ever have to go back. And, I had a cesarean section with my daughter when she was born. And same thing, after a few days, I basically noticed that the scar was healed and there was a little bit of the stitch sticking out. So I just pulled out the stitch myself, no big deal. So that ability has stayed with me. But as a child, whatever they did to me, which of course then made them study me and do all kinds of experiments, but there is this ability, and I don't think it's unique to me or you. I think everyone, every human being has this potential to heal themselves from anything and everything. And that's why the placebo effect, right? Like what you're saying, Rachel, if you believe it, if people who take a sugar pill but believe it's a medicine that's going to heal whatever, they're healed. So it's the belief, and it's being in touch with that. And I think we're going to recover that. And the damage that's been done to us as a society is this idea that we have to look outside of ourselves for all of these things, right? Including healing. So these authority figures called doctors, well, I think there's going to come a day when that's going to disappear, because we don't need that. We have that within. We have everything within.
We do. I think so too. And the time is coming. We won't be needing that aspect. Interesting on the hazel eyes and psychic. My eyes are hazel. I never thought of that as having anything to do with my intuition. I thought of that as being blasted into primitive parts of my brain that needed that intuition. But you two, being in Australia, I'll tell you my Australia story. Mark was going in for surgery. He had to have spinal surgery back in 1999. And he wanted to go to Adelaide to have it done, because Adelaide's like on that crystal or whatever. And but best of all, the doctors there had been trained that the subconscious never sleeps. So while the surgeons work, they say positive affirmation things like, he's going to heal. He's healing so fast. This is amazing. Instead of, whoa, look at, they knew that. And so Mark knew that they knew that psych. And so he was like, okay, I'm going to go there. And I was like freaking out. It's like, we're going to be on the other side of the world. I don't know if he's going to be okay. What's going to happen? Because it was freaky to me to think of losing my hero, my soulmate, my best friend, my everything. It just freaked me out. So I had a dream, and in the dream, I had seen where there was like this beagle, this dog that, or like a basset hound, the big old ears or whatever. And he was saying, well, my person here is a nurse, and she'll be right there with Mark while he's healing, and he'll be okay. And she's really good and all this. And I thought that was just sweet. And I told Mark, and I said, that actually gave me comfort. Well, we got to Australia, and his friend met him, and we're driving along, and he said, the nurse lives over this way if you want to go see her, because she's going to be in the operating room with you, or the operating theater, or whatever they called it. And Mark goes, yeah, that'd be cool. So they're driving, and as they're driving, I recognized the road, and I started saying, this is my dream. This is exactly my dream. We turn here, we turn there, we go here. And we pulled up to the house that I saw in my dream. There's the basset hound sitting on the porch, just sitting there. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And it was the nurse's house. So, that kind of intuition and insight and psychic gift, or whatever we want to call that, is like such a gift from the universe of comfort at a time when I needed it. And then to see the affirmation of it actually unfold was absolutely amazing. And how cool that same telepathic dog was sitting there like, yeah, I told you,
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And Mark was great. It was very, very successful surgery.
Well, I'm wondering if that's why they targeted you, Cathy, a part of the reason why that you were put in the program.
They didn't use any part of that on me. They used me for delivering messages to and from government leaders and drug lords, and for prostitution in the process, fulfilling perversions, whatever they might be. So I was used in a completely different capacity, and it was like they missed it. They missed a significant one, because I can fill up the rest of your day and the rest of my night telling you these stories that I have when I have these intuitive dreams. But that was just my Australia story. So I wanted to share that.
Well, Mark's very lucky because Adelaide's medical fraternity is terrifying. They're incredibly dangerous. This is where I've grown up, and I was experimented on by them. So he must have got the right ones.
Wow. Well, he knew somebody who knew somebody, because there were people in intelligence on a global scale that were so disgusted with what was being done to children like you and children like me that they were determined to stop it. So it was a super, super good faction that is still working today, doing what they can to expose this darkness, so no child has to go through what all of us have been through. It shouldn't happen. We should just have the gifts without the nonsense.
Yeah.
I've just been doing, last week I got some research on my past, because I've got the memories and I've always tried to anchor it to reality. And, I was born in 1961, and Sydney University is not far from where I was born, but I thought the hospital where I was born was linked to a different university. And I, been going through the historical societies and different places like that to get research. And I got a book on the hospital I was born in. And sure enough, during the late 50s to about the mid 60s, it was intricately linked to Sydney University, MK Ultra, Dr. Orne, and all the rest of it. So now I'm going down that rabbit hole, trying to get all the names, dates, everything. It's incredible what's coming up. There's a boat they used to all go out on. I think it used to be nicknamed the Lolita. All the stuff, just seems to parallel a lot of what's going on today. All the Epstein things. You look back and he wasn't the first one doing it. It seems to be a pattern. And I know with the girls we've talked about this. They're pretty dumb because they follow a playbook and they don't step outside of it. And so what we go through tends to fit a very definite pattern. I look at my childhood, and as I've been reading up on the Human Ecology Fund and the CIA at the moment, it's like, oh, I went through that. Oh, I went through that. Oh, that's why they did that to me. Because my parents never touched me, so it was to create this deficit. So then when I was trafficked or when I was abused, that, they hoped that then I would, feel that I wanted these horrific things, and thankfully my soul was strong enough that, I always said in myself, even though my body might be stimulated in a certain way, I don't want this. This is not who I am. And so it's fascinating, I think, as we look into it. The records are there to back up all of this stuff, as well as, what our bodies and our memories tell us.
Can I ask, did you say Orne, Dr. Marty Orne? Are you talking about Dr. Marty?
So he came out to Sydney University in Australia, and the CIA funded for him to come out here. And there was another doctor as well. I can send you all the research I'm uncovering. But it's all documented. It was in our mainstream media even, talking about him being here. And so what happened, the hospital where I was at, in the late 50s, the government here brought in a new rule to say that doctors in hospitals, once they're over a certain age, they could no longer be involved. So they wiped out pretty much a whole board of the hospital that they end up getting born in, and then they replaced it with their own people. And then, about a decade later, all of a sudden, all the directors either quickly resigned or retired, and then they changed to a different uni. So I think there's a lot of things there that happened. You can see the cause and effect, and that's sort of what I'm looking into at the moment. But yeah, he came to Sydney and was very involved with Sydney University. So I can send you everything on that if that's helpful.
Very interesting. I knew a Dr. Nurkum that was brought to Vanderbilt, and he worked with Marty Orne there. And it's just interesting. It's the same handful of creeps.
Yes, exactly.
The same perpetrators every time.
Yeah. Well, my main MK Ultra handler programmer studied at Sydney University.
Wow.
In psychology under a programmer of another high profile survivor. So, it's all interlinked. It's the same bunch.
Well, the
And-
hospital I was born in set up a psychiatric unit that focused on the psychology of children and babies.
Mm.
So but once we start digging, you see it everywhere. Yeah.
And isn't I think Dr. Orn was also on the board of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, conveniently.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I was just listening to the Greenbaum speech that I forget the doctor's name that he gave. And when I was looking at the name, because my spouse is German, and so Baum means tree. And, you know, Dr. Green is a figure that comes up in a lot of MK Ultra victims. So, and then tree is the Kabbalah, right? So it's so interesting, all of these little pieces that come out. And, you know, Cathy, with your what you were saying a minute ago, it's so interesting because, you know, time isn't really linear, right? So it's kind of like your brain is just able to pick up this scene over here with the beagle, you know, before it happens. And I think that's super fascinating. And it's also that intuition in us that people talk about it. That voice in me, that intuition has spared me so many things as an adult. You know, it's like, don't walk down that street right now, you know, and then I don't. Or, you know, so I think that's an interesting thing too. And maybe it's a little more available to us because we are in these different dimensions sometimes, like you said, Doug. You know, I was put, when I was about 3 or 4, I was put in this, I think it's an isolation thing, but it was a box and it had no seams, no light. So when I was in it, there was absolutely no way to distinguish anything. And as I was in there, and I was left in there for a long period of time, I was suddenly somewhere else. I was with animals, you know, I was partial to lions and elephants and dolphins. And I was talking with other beings like Jesus. And so when they took me out of the box, I was seemingly okay. And I remember the shock on the faces. They're like, because I wasn't there. I was just somewhere else. And so that was a feature of my childhood as well. Like when I'd be alone, I would just be somewhere else and connect with other beings. And so there's that facility, right? Like I'm aware, it's made me very aware that I'm in this 3-dimensional reality of form, but there's all kinds of other levels. So like when I take a walk in the woods, I see the tree, but I also see the tree being itself, right? And I know, Rachel, you have a lot of that as well. And I've you know, I've seen, and Rachel taught me to look for this too. And so sometimes I would walk in the woods and I would see, you know, like on the tree trunks, or there's sort of like a circle, I don't know what that thing's called, but I would suddenly see a face and it would actually wink at me and I would look again, you know, or animals, you know, animals will come up to me and somehow I know, like I have pets and I know what they want. They just come up and I know, oh, you need this, you need that, right? So, and that's the same thing when you have a baby, you know, you kind of know, you kind of learn. So there's this whole other language or dimension to everything that is physical that I think all of us can sort of tap into. But that's, and again, I think this is something that everybody can do. We have so much potential as human beings. We're so much greater than what we've been reduced to, you know. And paradoxically, because of what we went through, that sort of trauma and that stress, it by necessity brought these things out. But I'm hopeful that everybody, when we get rid of these psychopaths, that everybody will be able to step into their true and full potential.
I think that's where we're
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
I do too.
Mm.
It's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. You can feel it.
Mm.
Yeah, and I see it too. I get such a view of it because the area that I'm working in is um, moving into the future. It's where the people are so disgusted with the corrupted system that when the mothers try to help the child, or the fathers try to help an abused child, the child is turned right back into the trafficking system. I mean, we're very, very, very corrupted here. And so they're wanting to, like, okay, we can't do it that way. How do we do it? How do we help over here? And it's almost like watching society starting to restructure itself with the moral compass that was taken from us through this corruption. And there's so many different positive aspects that I see every day. And so often I hear from survivors that healed with the information and PTSD time to heal, or and they just want one more piece of the puzzle, because everybody's different. Everybody's situation and circumstance is different. It's like every survivor has another piece of the puzzle to bring to the table. And when we put that whole puzzle together, we get the full picture of the magnitude of the truth of what's really going on. And it's so important, this individualistic aspect. And so often they just want one more little piece of their own puzzle. It's like, okay, I can do this. I got it now. And then they'll be fine. And it's so nice to see this mass acceleration of people waking up, reclaiming their own power, healing, realizing the potential that we do have as human beings, because that potential is exactly what this handful of dark cabal fear the most. They fear our strength. They're afraid we're going to remember who we are. They're afraid humanity is going to all stop looking outside themselves to their authority and remember that we have all the power. And it's happening. And seeing it happening, it's so exciting to me. I celebrate that every day. It's something I get to see. So I don't have to just stay in, a dark spot of saying what happened. It's more like what's happening. And it's exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah, your inner joy, Cathy, is contagious. And it's lovely. It's a testimony that, considering what we've gone through, that we have this joy, because for me, it's, I can sit here and, like you said before, listen to the sounds of the birds, and that just brightens my day. Or put my hands on the tree and feel the spirit of the tree, or all these things that we have that are so incredible. But I look at my persecutors, and including those in my family, and they don't have that joy, and they miss out.
No.
And I think I used to study my father, who was a total psychopath and a serial killer. And I would notice every time he did something evil, part of his soul would diminish, to the point where, and as much as they fractured me, he would fracture even more. Yeah. And he's at the point where he believes he's done nothing, but they can't get enjoyment out of life. Whereas for us, where we've chosen to reject what they wanted and chosen to hold on to love and truth and all the good things, and chosen to help other people rather than take from other people, our lives just get fuller and fuller. I mean, I'm standing in the park here, and I just love the energy. But you can feel it, and like you say, walking barefoot, and these are the things. I don't need a million possessions. I don't need my life filled up with all the other clutter. I just love the simple things in life. And the other thing that gets me is how, by the time I was about 50, I think I'd had about 50 near-death experiences outside of the cult stuff as well. But I'd always go to the edge of the cliff, but never go over. Mm-hmm. And it was fascinating how, again, with the intuitive thing, I remember one stage I was blogging, and, this is back about 2007, and I just blogged to get my anger out about the corruption in government. I very quickly became the #1 blog in Australia, which quite surprised me, but they tried to take me out. But my guides would say, do this, don't do this, do this. One day they hit me with, I was in Tasmania, staying at a resort, all these weird things were going on. They hit me with a stun gun, I'm assuming, because I had tradesmen outside my window. I started having a massive heart attack. I started getting all the chest pains and blacking out. And I just said to God, no, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready to go. Somehow I got to check out. I walked to the bus stop, which was like, I felt like I was going to drop dead. And his car kept on going around the block watching me. And I think, please, can you take me to the airport? Because my guide said, do not go to hospital in Tasmania. You won't get out. And so, for me, I've always been on a very short leash with my guides, very like, do this, don't go here, do this. And it ended up being, so this car, I was sort of watching out of the corner of my eye. It went around, and because I didn't watch it, they came back the other way around, drove right up on the concrete apron at a bus stop, and eyeballed me. It was 2 government agents. And, I just looked at them nonchalantly. I mean, inside I'm feeling like I'm about to drop dead. But I got on the bus. I had to fly to Melbourne to see my daughter. And, we sat there laughing and crying in a restaurant over my crazy life. I didn't feel like going to hospital there. I got to Sydney. I went straight into emergency. All sorts of things happened. I ended up dropping dead in hospital and da-da-da-da. But I'm still here, and Rach, you and I have talked about this. Your father tried to kill you so many times, same with my parents. They'd take me to the beach when the beaches were closed and I was a little kid. I couldn't swim, and they'd take me out and drop me in the current and then walk away. But a lone surfer would come and rescue me. So it didn't matter how much they tried to get rid of me. I'm still here, and I'm going to speak out, and I'm going to keep speaking out till it's time for me to move on.
Yeah, it's not your time until it's your time. Yeah, there were 10 attempts on my life under the age of 15. So, but, each time, I even remember one time, was usually my father, but he contracted somebody to hit me off my bike, and that didn't work either. There was one time my main MK Ultra programmer tried to throttle me. And I remember going back into myself because I must have gone out of consciousness. And the look on her face was, oh, I've done it. And then she walked away. And then when I came to and she saw me, the look on her face was priceless. It was so worth going through that horror and that experience just to see the look on her face, because she couldn't get rid of me. And she went into shock after that, because it was around a really horrible incident where a child died. And she was just sitting on a milk crate in absolute shock, because my father wouldn't kill me. He put me in he made me dig a grave for this kid that had been murdered. And it was just a nightmare. But even through that, even though he tried to kill me again while I was in the grave, she was just sitting there in shock. I was conscious and I was capable, and I was still going through the motions of what I had to do to survive that moment. She's just a lump of meat. I was much more powerful than she was, much stronger.
I think that's something that happened many times with me too, that I would be, I would die, I would be killed in various ways, and I would leave my body, and then I would be, it happened to be the figure of Jesus. I would be there and have a chat. And then I would always see a holographic timelines and realities, and how that's when it really, I really understood how interconnected we all are, because you'd think, well, what difference would it make if I wasn't here on the planet? But I could see that would make a difference. So I would come back. And then every time I would come back to life, I would be dead for however long and then come back, the shock again on the face is like, and I think they realized at some point that, we can't kill her, I mean, we can kill her, but she'll just minutes later just come back into her body. And it's because, again, I can't explain it in words, but it's just something I know. It's this, I don't know, it's this feeling. It's, yes, I'm in a body. Yes, I'm a human being. I'm talking with a larynx or whatever, but I'm also not. So like I always walk around with this sense of who I am. It's not just here, right? Like we're eternal. We truly are eternal beings. And so we're in this body for a period of time, but it's that, again, that makes my perspective on life is so different. It's so helpful to me to have that knowledge. I've left my body and come back, because I just see all of that in that way. And back to the joy, and it's true, Cathy is like, just so, every time I'm around her, I start smiling, like my joy quotient goes up. And, because of all the trauma and abuse, I used to have this idea like that I had to have, because there were so many intensely negative experiences, that the opposite had to be true, that joy had to be this intense, big joy experience. But I learned that no, that's not the case. It's actually the really small things. So I'll sit outside. I sat outside in the sun today for a little while. And it's just that exquisite feeling of the sun on my cheek, just feeling that warmth. And then, the birds are singing. And then there was some breeze and or when I take a walk, just looking at a tree and just there's so many different kinds of leaves and different kinds of trees. It's like, the creator that made this, I just think, my God, the beauty. Or I have a lot of wildlife, so I'll watch the wild turkeys or the bears. I run into bears a lot on walks, or, the foxes or the owls. And I just love to look at them. So if I'm fortunate enough to have one of these wild animals in front of me, it's just like my heart stops and it's like, if it was a movie, there would be that music like, oh, it's just like, wow. There's such amazing, beautiful creatures. So that's what brings me joy and babies. If I'm out in town and there's a little child or a baby and they just smile at you and sometimes they're little people, they'll say something like hi, and oh, my heart just completely melts. And so I've learned that that's what joy is. It's just those little moments. And the more I experience them and focus them, the more my brain began to see them, because I was kind of dead, at some point. Like I couldn't feel anything. And so that's my biggest gratitude, is to be able to feel those things. And it's life, any kind of life, a tree, an animal, a baby. It's just so it makes me feel like singing a high opera note.
That's so beautiful. My spirit was always in a safe, loving space, no matter what my body was enduring. And the near-death experiences I would have would be like how people report in a car crash or something, where there's a thin line and they have an overview of what's going on or whatever. And it was like being above it all and in a safe, loving space. No matter what was done, they can't touch the human spirit. No matter what was done, we all had that place that they can't touch, that they can't stop, that they can't manipulate, that can't be manipulated, because it's a beautiful part of life. And I'm so excited about that I keep that freeway open. It was so highly developed. I just keep that open. I know what that safe, loving space is. And, people might have to meditate or pray to get to it or whatever, but I'm just going to keep it wide open. I don't ever want to close that door, because it's such a celebration of the miracle of life. And the fact that we are all still here against all odds. We're here. And if we're here, it's for a purpose, and I'm going to keep living that purpose. And it's a celebration to be able to be free to do it.
Yeah, and love is all around us. I know when I've gone through some really difficult periods, and I said to the universe, I said, there's love everywhere. I just can't see it. Please open my eyes. And instantly I see everything. And, I've had some crazy experiences. One time I was really down. I thought I was going to lose everything. I was going to drive down I was driving down the cliffs to sit on the cliffs. And I knew if I got there that was going to be the end of me. And on the way to the cliffs, I got pulled over by the police for speeding. And the policeman was furious, absolutely furious. He said, do you know how long I've been behind you? I said, no. He goes, do you realize you've been speeding? I said, yes, I come through here all the time. And he was just screaming at me. And I said, look, I'm just having a really bad day. And he screamed and screamed. And I just said to him a second time, I'm just having a really bad day. And he stopped in the middle of his rage. He looked at me. He went totally calm. And he said, don't do it again. And turned around and just walked off. Oh. And that was enough for me. I turned the car around and went home. And all I needed was just something good like that to get me through.
Yeah.
But every time I've gone through a situation, the universe provides. And so, like you, Cathy, and Rachel and Max, my anchor is the divine. I've recently done a lot of psychedelics, which has helped as well. But it's just that is my truth. The lies of these corrupt people who are acting in self-interest isn't my truth. My truth is that I will be here as long as I'm meant to be here, and when I'm meant to go, I'll go. And no one and nothing can change that.
That's right.
Well, I feel very grateful that I have like you were saying this earlier, Rachel, it really cracked me up. You can't talk about handbags or these small, things. And so I feel very grateful that I have a sense of my purpose, my mission, right? So life is just, everything is great because I just feel so happy every day because I know what I'm here to do. And all I have to do is just put one foot in front of the other and follow that guidance and do the next thing. And it's such a beautiful way to live. And I've gotten used to that. And sometimes you can call that, synchronicity. But whatever it is, I get like a dream like you, Cathy, or an intuition. And then, Rachel may text me and say a thing, and then, something happens. And then it's like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, there, do that. So if I learn to get out of my own way, and then I'm just guided and guided to the next thing. And I love to do things for people, to help people, to inspire people. That makes me feel so happy, And so it's that thing where, if you receive like a present, a gift, it's pretty fun. But to me, giving the gift is a lot more fun. I just love that feeling. And I, like you, Cathy, I didn't know if there were good people in the world. I grew up around these people and didn't think that there were. So that's the other like massive joy of my life today. Like I have met, the three of you and other people, and it's like, wow, there's good people, brilliant, like talented, gifted people. And it just restores my faith. And I feel like, all right, I'm glad I came here and I'm glad I came into this life and did what I did, because every day now is a gift. And just knowing all of you and others, it's restored my faith in humanity. It's like, no, there are really good people. And even the people that we may call the normies, they're all good people. Despite everything that's been thrown at us, people love each other. They love their children. There's a disaster, everyone runs out to help. So this is who we really are, and I'm just in love with that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I just realized, here I am sitting having a chat with three of my greatest heroes. I mean, go back 10, 15 years when I was at the height of my pain, my physical pain and my misery and the memories. And now here I am speaking to the three of you. It's incredible. And that's another indictment of the fact that we're coming to this higher frequency and that we're winning a war on an energy level that a lot of people just don't even recognize that that's what we're going through. I know we're going to get to a really high, beautiful place where people aren't going to be going through children aren't going to be going through the same nightmares that they're going through now that we've all been through. I know that because I can feel the frequency. It is heightening. And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Amen, Rachel.
Yeah,
I've
really.
seen it actually in the future. I have visions sometimes, and I had one of children in a classroom and they're reading history and they're saying, oh, that kind of thing used to exist on Earth. And in the vision, I can feel the children, and they're pure. They're like, children are supposed to be, and they were not traumatized at all. And they were just sort of curious and like, oh my God, that used to happen on Earth. And so I know I stepped into a future moment at that time. And I that's also what keeps me going, knowing that I can do my little piece to make that reality happen as soon as possible. So I'm thinking we've been talking for about an hour and a half. So I'm thinking we should wrap up. I think this has been such an inspiring discussion. A lot of times, and you were saying this earlier, Rachel, people, other survivors may say, how dare you be happy? Or other people, I've had that said to me, well, no, you couldn't have gone through that because you're okay, you're good, you're happy, you know. And that's our birthright for all of us, right? So I thought we might close by just going around, and I'd love to hear from each of you if you have any last words for people who might be watching this, you know, just advice or something from the heart. You know, what do you want to leave people with as we sign off?
That's beautiful. You said that so well, and it's wonderful. I mean, talking with the three of you today, this has just been, of course, it's a joy. What a celebration! You know, and the information we were able to bring to light. It's so much of the way that I am, who I found myself to be at the base core energy of my being is love, the energy of love. That not the emotion of love. I'm talking about the energy, the vibration. That's who I am. That's who I was as a child. And I hear a lot of survivors say, well, my childhood was taken away from me. And I feel like I'm living exactly who I was when I was a child. I'm so happy. I'm so free. And it's such a celebration. Children, when they come into this world, are so intuitive. They still have their birth knowledge. They're so wise. They're so loving and pure. They're so amazing. And then life starts getting in the way. Life structure starts, you know, getting in their way until they start losing more and more of those amazing capabilities that we're all born with. Well, by going back and reclaiming who I was intended to be, living the love that I am, living my life's purpose, I'm living exactly how I would have been as a child, but with the knowing that life is not going to get in my way and dampen my joy. They can't have that. They can't do that to me. I'm going to just continue to live this higher vibration because that is in harmony with where our whole planet is going. That's where humanity is evolving to, and I want to be right there to watch it all unfold.
Beautifully said. Just on exactly what you've said, Cathy, you can choose how you react to the slings and arrows that are thrown at you. So, you know, you can choose to go and rock in the corner and not be able to cope, or you can choose to step out of that and be your true soul self and overcome it. And so in that way, you know, I've often thanked my trolls and those that have tried to attack me, because I wouldn't have come to the point of being as strong as I am now without that experience. So choose, make a choice.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I find a lot of times, you know, the question is, how can, you know, there be a good God if evil exists in the world? And when I go to my guides and talk about this, they say, you know, you're here to learn how to love on a deeper level. And through everything that you've gone through, you're learning unconditional love. And it's how you respond to what you go through. And bad things do and will happen. And if we can use those bad things as a way to love even deeper, you know, I would love to see my abusers change and heal and become, you know, people who do good in the world. You know, I want to see everyone do that. But I think as souls, you know, we're here to grow, and sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's hard, but that's okay. We can rise up within that and use this as a way to learn and to grow.
Yeah, beautiful. And I would just say to people, you know, there are sometimes really hard times, but we're strong and we're resilient. And if the four of us here have been through some pretty unfathomable experiences, and we healed and we recovered and we reclaimed ourselves, and we're here today, and we're not only here today, we're thriving and we're helping other people. We're creating things that help people move forward. So, you know, have faith and have hope in yourself, because each one of us is a beautiful, brilliant piece of love here in a human body, and everyone can heal, come back from anything. If we can do it, you can do it. And when you do that, you'll step into your potential, and then all your abilities will come back. And what I look forward to is what we can all do together, you know, how we can take this thing forward together. So thank you so much, everyone, for this wonderful talk that we've had. And I hope maybe we can do another one again in the future.
Love to.
Sounds great. Thank you, Max.
I'd love it. I'd love it. It's been wonderful. Thank you for making this happen and bringing us all together. What a delight. What a delightful experience.